Man, in the world today, our boys need to know as men, they're going to have to do hard things, but they also need to know they can. That with Christ, you can do hard things. You can overcome stuff that the world tells you can't. The truths of the Bible work, whether you're a Christian or not. Like there are things in the Bible about the way you treat your wife, and it creates a better marriage.
Welcome to All Things Possible. We're excited to have you.
Good to be here.
Yeah, for a quick intro of Dean, we've known you for like 10, 12 years, somewhere in that range. Yeah. You were formerly...
Maybe 20 now for me.
Maybe 20 for you?
But you guys might know each other better.
Yeah.
Well, we probably connect on a more guy level, but...
Yeah. For sure.
But you used to work with Christian surfers over on the East Coast, right?
Yep. Yep.
And that's where we met up with you. I remember meeting you in Florida back in the day, back with the Cobian crew, and remember that. Where are you at nowadays? What's new in your life?
Yeah, so after about 25 years of trying to make disciples among surfers, the Lord surprised us and was like, okay, we're going to shift gears now. And way back, there was a ministry that birthed out of Moody Bible Institute called Sonlife. And when I was just a young guy, I'd gone through training with them, studying the life of Jesus, and they had a massive impact on my perspective on ministry and making disciples. And so in 2017, we shifted complete worlds, moved out of the surfing world and moved into working with pastors and youth pastors and ministry leaders where we train, coach, and mentor them, disciple making based on the Son's life. So we're no experts or consultants, but we come alongside them and study Jesus and then help them see his life with clarity and then begin to kind of move some clutter out to be able to hear the Lord leading them how to implement that into their context.
Was there like an intentional moment where you're like, I'm out of this surf realm, like I want to get out of here? Or was it more like, what was that transition like?
Yeah, so for us, like, I didn't grow up surfing. I grew up in West Virginia. In October of 1991, I felt the Lord impress this question on me about who tells surfers Jesus loves them. And I had no clue. I'd never met a surfer, didn't surf. And so for me, it was never really about surfing. It was always about surfers. And it was a real driving passion in my life to share the good news of Jesus with surfers. So for me, that was my plan till I die. This is what I'm going to do forever. This is the only thing I've ever done. This is the only thing I know how to do. So the Lord may have been dropping some hints, but I wasn't really listening. And so for us, it was kind of abrupt. And the Lord just kind of moved us out of surf ministry in a pretty quick fashion. And the guys at Sonlife were like, man, you've been part of the family all these years. Come join the team. Yeah, it happened kind of quick. And we kind of, our head was spinning and we were trying to figure out, what do we do now? Like none of these people surf. This is a whole different culture.
You said something about Moody Institute, like something about how they communicate about Christ really stood out to you. What was that? I want to hear a little more.
Yeah, so the guy that started Sonlife Ministry was at Moody, and early on, Sonlife was part of Moody. It was really looking at Jesus as a real person and studying his life chronologically. So, a guy gets a job as a youth pastor, and he calls you up, man, I went to Bible school, I finally got a job, and what do I do? And, you say, well, what did Jesus do first? I have no idea what he did first. Well, what did he do 6 months, 18 months, 2 years in? What was he doing? I have no idea. We don't generally think of Jesus in that chronological fashion. So for me, it really stood out. We weren't just studying the message of Jesus, but we were studying his methodology and him as a model for how he did this. And I had never in all my education, formal education, really approached Jesus that way in that kind of a personal fashion. So it really, it caught my attention, but it was also just so practical because, I went to Bible school and I learned all these, big heady ideas. And then all of a sudden I'm sitting with a teenager, literally the first teenager I ever did a Bible study with. The very next day went to his public school, filled a locker with papers and set it on fire and set the whole high school on fire.
Oh my God.
And so it was like, wait, I know all these big heady ideas. I have no clue how to work with these kids, And so the practicality of looking at Jesus and how he built relationships and how he was intentional and how he was missional and how he developed young men, that arguably a lot of scholars believe that only Peter was out of his teen years, that the other guys might have been all teenagers. And so how did he develop them to be world changers? It's really practical.
So along this journey, you met your wife, married, how many children?
So we've got 3 kids. They're about to be 20, 18, and 14, 2 boys and a girl. We've been married. We're coming up on 27 years, which is really hard to believe. It goes really fast.
Wow. Congrats, man. That's admirable. So like you learn like these discipleship things, like how the Lord like loved on these men and probably teenagers. Like, how do you apply that as like a father? Yeah. I mean, like to encourage like me as a father, like my wife as a mother, like what are some things that you learned and how does that look like for you and your family now?
Yeah. And it's interesting because a lot of ministry leaders will go through training that we offer and things, and they're thinking all about their church, all about their youth group, all about their ministry. And it doesn't connect that first this starts in your home.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter to me if I make 1 million disciples of other people's kids, and I do care about that, but it doesn't matter if I don't make disciples with my own kids, And so I think part of that is really thinking through as a parent what we value. Jesus talks about first abiding in him. And so thinking through as a parent, what do we really value? And then kind of doing a hard evaluation on, are my values really lined up? Because sometimes I find I value things that when I look at Jesus, they're not really that important. They're just important to me. They're the culture I grew up in. It's what it was like in West Virginia or whatever. And so first figuring out, what really matters. And then thinking, some smart guy once said, always start with the end in mind. Mm-hmm. So thinking about, when you're holding a little baby, it's hard to imagine. I remember when my daughter was born, it was very different than when my boys were born. I adored my boys, but man, when my daughter was born, I couldn't listen to a country music song for months without crying. It was like all I could think about was someday I got to give this to some gorilla boyfriend who's going to marry her and like, not have a clue what he's doing, it's just a different thing. But so it's hard to imagine when you're holding that little baby, wow, in the blink of an eye, they're going to be a man, they're going to be a woman. And thinking with that goal in mind of, well, what do I want to instill in them? And then where's that going to happen? And starting to backtrack. And honestly, I mean, my wife is a phenomenal mom. I'm a mid-grade dad. But I think, there are a couple things we've probably done well. One, my kids know without a shadow of a doubt that their dad chases hard after Jesus. And 2, they know without a shadow of a doubt that it's not because their dad's godly, it's because their dad really needs Jesus. And so when I'm telling them, look, be a man, chase Jesus, they've seen that in me, and not because I got it figured out, but because I need that. But yeah, backtracking in their life to seeing, like, I remember when they were 9 and 10, we were talking about, we had a definition of manhood. Some of the men in our community came together with our sons and developed a definition that said a real man loves God, leads courageously, rejects passivity, embraces responsibility, and lives for a greater good. And that greater good was God's glory. It's not just for what we see in front of us. And so we had come to this point, my boys were 9 and 10, and we're like, we part of being a man is doing hard things. And so we started doing sections of the Appalachian Trail.
Wow.
And I remember we hiked Blood Mountain, and they were really small, so they took after me, so they were really small. and they've grown now. They're catching up with the genetics of their mom, and finally. But they were wee little, so they couldn't carry anything. So like the other dad and I, after the trip, we got honest and we're like, bro, that first day, did you think there's no way I'm going to make it? Because our backpacks, mine was 51 pounds. And I weigh like 53.
Were you hiking in supplies?
Oh, yeah,
food,
everything,
water.
everything. Yeah. Wow. And then we get to Blood Mountain, which some would argue is the hardest hill on the Appalachian Trail. Okay. And I remember my boys just thinking, I can't do this. And us talking to them about, you know what? I know right now you think you can't do this, but all things are possible in Christ. And so we're going to call on him. We're going to ask him to help us. And we're going to do this. And we're going to do it together. We're going to help each other. And I remember afterwards, I bought these little magnets. They were wooden that you put on your fridge, and they say Blood Mountain. And I thought, someday I'm going to give these to my boys when they go off to college. And remember, you can do hard things, and thinking I'll never, ever do that. And I remember when we dropped my son at college last fall, I wrote him a letter and I put that in the envelope and left it on his desk.
The magnet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he called me like a few hours later. He found it and he texted me and was like, hey, Dad, I found your letter, But it was really cool because, man, in the world today, our boys need to know as men, they're going to have to do hard things, but they also need to know they can. That with Christ, you can do hard things. You can overcome stuff that the world tells you can't. I remember somebody talking about, books like C.S. Lewis and different kind of books. And it said, when kids are little, let them dream of great battles and victories, because when they're older, they'll have to fight them.
So they have to believe that they can fight them starting young, so that once they get older, that belief is still instilled in them.
Yeah.
What's some of your fatherhood fears surrounding your boys in particular? And beyond prayer, did you do anything to support or work on that?
So my first fear started way before teen years, and it was that I was afraid I was going to drop the baby. So I wouldn't hold anybody else's babies. But I got over that.
You learn fast.
Right, I was afraid of the dirty diaper.
Those were.
He learned fast. So I barely changed a diaper the first week of the baby's life.
Oh yeah. Those were gnarly, but we figured it out. We figured it because men do hard things.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
But when my boys came into their teen years, there were definitely things I was worried about, and it was one thing was a fear of overexposing them to the world and underexposing them to the world. And we took a philosophy and understand my boys are about to be 20 and 18 and my daughter's 14. So they're still in process very much, and we're not perfect parents, but my kids do love Jesus. And I'm like, if we can nail that, the rest will work itself out. I'm not worried about it. With our kids, one of the things we said is we're not going to shelter our kids from the reality of the world, but we are going to shelter our kids from being entertained by the realities of this world. So I don't want my kids to not know they live in a broken world where sin destroys people. Yeah. But I don't want my kids sitting in front of a TV laughing at that. Like it's no big deal. It is a big deal. Like the people in those shows, in real life, those people commit suicide. Yeah. In real life, those people get diseases that kill them. In real life, those people have massive depression and anxiety problems. It's a funny joke in the moment, but it's really not funny, And so we didn't want our kids listening to music. We were pretty limited on tech stuff. My boys got phones when they were 16 because they were driving, and it's questionable whether that was good. They didn't have social media, which my sons now are talking about how they really appreciate that.
That's cool.
Because they see, so my son who's at college called and said, man, I see in all my friends massive anxiety, massive comparison.
Even amongst men.
Oh, yeah. There's a new movie getting ready to drop, Brett Barley made, talking about this his life. And so my son was just saying, I'm really glad I didn't have social media because I don't feel the same way all my friends feel.
Wow.
Yeah.
But I didn't spend my whole childhood looking at that. So we limited tech. There was a lot of concern as a man with issues of lust.
Yeah.
And so we started when our kids were little. We used a little resource called Good Picture, Bad Picture.
We have that book. I haven't busted it out yet.
Yeah.
I'm like putting it off as long as
it's like,
So we decided, I grew up in a pretty gnarly world. My parents got saved when I was 3. I got saved as a young kid, but we were pretty secular Christians. We went to church on Sunday, but then between Sundays, I didn't have any friends that knew Jesus. And my friends, some of them were into some pretty bad things. Yeah. And I was exposed to a lot of that. And so my wife and I were like, someone is going to tell our kids about sex. And so I'd rather that be us. And so all 3 of my kids, I had a pretty cool little book that I took them out. I used to do daddy days where we would go to breakfast and I would try to walk through one proverb. Usually they'd be like, are we done yet?
Yeah.
One Proverbs is a lot for a child to go
We're just doing one verse and halfway through they're like, we're done. And
get me out of here.
I had these grandiose ideas and my kids
ease into it.
Yeah. And they don't remember one devotional I did at a daddy day, but all 3 of my kids talk about going on daddy days.
But they know.
They remember that.
They knew you loved them and made that intentional time.
Yeah. And we would do that regularly. Thank you, Chick-fil-A, for taking all my money.
That is not a Chick-fil-A endorsement.
No. No, that was
I'm just joking.
That was a really expensive way to do Daddy Day.
Yeah.
And so we did that, and then one Daddy Day, I took each kid at a certain age, and we didn't go to Chick-fil-A. We went to the water, and we sat by the water, and I read through this book and explained sex to them. So then when they came into their teen years, as they were coming into their teen years, we started the Good Picture, Bad Picture. So we had a plan. One of the things I found in parenting is that, I knew everything about parenting because I had listened to Focus on the Family on the radio, and I had been a youth pastor and worked with everybody else. I knew everything about parenting until I had a kid. And suddenly it was like, I have no idea what to do. And I needed some direction. And so I needed a plan. And so with the Good Picture, Bad Picture, we developed a plan and we taught our kids that curiosity is natural, but it's a red flag. And what it means is go talk to mom and dad. When you're curious, go talk to us. Don't just sit in that and keep it a secret. Curiosity is great. Come ask us and talk about it. So we try to create a very open environment, which is good, but it backfires when your kids ask you questions that you're like, don't act shocked. Don't act surprised. You're like, oh my gosh.
Can I get back to you on that one?
Right. Can't believe they just asked that, But at the same time, you're like, oh man, I have no greater honor than my kid would feel free to ask me that. This is so, it doesn't make it less awkward for us. And we always said, if you're going to interact with your kid, that's going to be awkward. Let it be awkward for you, not for them. And so we tried to create that atmosphere where they knew what they saw was good and what they saw was bad. And we were in the surf world, so they were seeing things. And we started training them early about, what you look at and what you don't look at. But that was a great fear walking through that. And we're continuing. I mean, they're young men now. They're in the throes of hormones.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
I've spent my whole life in the ocean, and I've learned, just like wearing a seatbelt or a helmet, safety matters. That's why my family and I use shark bands.
Shark Bands uses patented magnetic technology to deter sharks by disrupting their electroreception. Kind of like a bright light in their eyes that says, nope, not today, shark face. No batteries, no charging, just simple, effective peace of mind.
Whether we're surfing, swimming, or just splashing around, Shark Bands is our go-to for ocean safety.
You want to geek out on how it works? Dive into episode 14 for a deeper look at the tech.
And check the show notes for the link to shark bands because your peace of mind in the ocean is worth it. Stay safe, stay stoked, and keep loving the ocean.
I mean, back to when you were talking about the characteristics of a masculine, godly man.
Yeah.
Like at a young age, you're already speaking that to them. Yeah. Can you walk me through those again? Like I just I could rewind and like listen to it again, but I want to write those down.
Yeah. Yeah. And really, we drew them out of the life of Jesus. There were things we saw in Jesus as a man. I think that Jesus is man as God intended man to be. Mm-hmm. That when I want to know what a real man looks like, I look at Jesus. That's what Adam looked like before the fall. And that's what we aspire to. And so, we said a real man loves God. He leads courageously, that he doesn't wait for other people, because when he becomes a husband, nobody else is going to step up and lead his wife, right? He's going to have to love his wife. And we learn a lot about what leadership looks like that, not authoritarian, demanding leadership, but not passive leadership, like Adam, who stood there, not you, Adam, Adam and Eve, Adam, who stood there and let Eve eat of the tree and didn't do anything, just stood there passively. And so a real man loves God, leads courageously, rejects passivity. As a man, it's so easy. It's such a temptation to be like, oh, I don't care. Just whatever. In my marriage, tired. Just whatever. It's been a long day, whatever. It's so easy to be passive, but a real man rejects that, and God can give us the power to reject that. But then he also embraces responsibility. In the surf world, we saw a lot of men who duck responsibility, because if you're responsible for something, then you're on the hook for it. And if the waves get good, then you got to not go surf. And so a lot of guys they just want to stay real fluid and not take any responsibility.
I don't like schedules because the ocean is doing its thing.
That's right.
Who wants to have a schedule when the ocean has the schedule?
That's right. And there are ways to schedule around that, right?
No, there is.
I'm just empathizing with those surfers who struggle to have a schedule and responsibility.
Yeah, we told a wife. We told a wife this week. So they have a young family. And we were surfing Polahali with them, and they were talking about, how every time it gets good, he's got to go. And we said, well, what if you printed up some passes for 6 months, and he got a certain number, and every time it gets good, he can cash one in. But once they're all gone,
I like this idea.
You can't. So then it's like, how good is it? Because like I remember a really sad story about a friend of mine whose marriage unfortunately ended, and his kids. There's some rough patches there with them, but there was a Christmas where they're all sitting around the tree. They can't open gifts because mom's like, we got to wait on dad. But dad went surfing, and not that this would justify it, but you would understand this. It wasn't good. Like, it wasn't even good. It's like, not that it's okay to blow your kids off on Christmas Day if it is good.
No, but that's like, you got to draw the line somewhere. I mean, I feel like we have a pretty good balance.
Right.
I mean, everything you're talking about too, like we have to battle those things inside. Yeah. Like you're saying, embracing the fact that we have to own our, the things that we do, where we're headed. All those things you pointed out, like are things that men have to battle.
Right.
I wanted to tag on to what he's pointing on too, is like, I think a lot of men might hear this and be like, well, I might not be a real man. Like, I never got taught leadership. I don't know. How do you bring some grace into this? Because the truth is, everyone's trying to figure out life. We're all struggling. We all have pain points. Like, none of us are going to be like Jesus because we're truly, like, that's why we need him. We literally need him to fill in where we're, like, not pulling it off. But, like, just for the man who's maybe listening and feeling like, whoa, like, I might be dropping the ball in a few different areas. Like, what would you say to that guy?
No, I think that's
Which is, like, that guy is, like, literally most of us. Yeah. We're all like, if you honestly read the Proverbs, like you can look in there and be like, well, a lot of times I'm like the fool. Like that's the truth.
Right.
But some of us are proud enough to say like, well, I got it pretty good. I'm doing it. I have it all together. But the truth is like, we all have some sort of struggle.
No, I think that's a really good point. And I think, first off, it's really important to know that it's easy to sit behind this mic and talk about these things. Mm-hmm. For the last 20 years, putting them into practice has been 2 steps forward, 1 step back of successes and failures. That there are days where my wife is really proud to be my wife. And there are days where she's really not, but I think that part of it is learning to love others and deny ourselves. In Luke 14, Jesus talks about loving him first and not loving self, and my problem is that I'm so self-consumed that I'm passive for other people's needs, but I'm not passive about my needs. When I'm hungry, we're active and leading courageously. When I'm upset, when I have needs, the problem is I'm passive about my wife's needs. I'm passive about my kids' needs. I'm passive about my neighbor's need. And I think it's taking steps. It's beginning to recognize these things in my life, to recognize, am I growing in love for God, which that is a responsive love. So that begins by faith, believing that God really does care about me, that he really does love me, that in Christ he really does accept me. And that captures a man or woman's heart. And then leading courageously, looking at my life honestly and saying, hey, where's areas I can grow? In rejecting passivity, talking to my wife in a safe place where if God really does accept me, then I can honestly say to my wife, hey, where am I being passive in our marriage? Where am I being passive with our kids? Where do you need me to step up? And that's scary as all get out. That's terrifying. And, you got to enter into that conversation with some prenups, of, hey, look, you're going to have to go gracious. Don't give me the knockout punch. I can't take it. But I do want you to be honest.
She probably has like 5 knockout punches.
She's like, well, now that you're opening this up.
Right, yeah.
But the fact that you're opening it up in itself is huge. Like the amount of times we don't even open up to allow that conversation to happen, no matter what end of the spectrum you're on, it's so few and far between. And when it comes to marriage, you look at how many marriages aren't making it. And then the marriages that are making it, how many of them are even good?
Our marriage is a lot of work, but the alternative is just having a stinky marriage. And I don't want that. When we first got married, Keith Green had a quote. It said, if you want to love with me then. I only ask that you still be my friend. And, my marriage is better today, and it's still a lot of work, and we still butt heads, but it's better than I ever imagined it could be. Mm-hmm. And man, I don't want to settle for less. I don't want to just stay married.
Yeah.
Like I want to be best friends and thrive. When you look at marriage biblically, the end goal is oneness and pursuing oneness. And sometimes I think in marriage, just pursue survival and just like, okay, let's just not get divorced. And it's like, wow, that's just way too low of a goal in our culture. I read today in the news, which is a terrible habit to read the news, but I was reading in the news, some rock star I've never heard of that's famous was talking about how no one she knows that's married and has kids is happy.
Yeah, I saw that. She clearly doesn't have decent friends in her life that have a life pulled together.
Yeah.
So to say, not that, I'm seeing I saw what you're talking about.
You've been telling me a lot about like, there's a common theme on social media of like really downgrading parenting or downgrading
marriage. It's all like kind of it's a comedy show.
But it's like, it's not surprising because these things are are foundational things that God created.
Right.
And the enemy wants to destroy the things that he's established here on earth. So it's honestly, it's not too surprising to see these attacks on these established blessings.
Yeah.
Well, I think like too, you look at society and from like, we all come from a biblical worldview.
Right.
Whereas much of society does not. And so even the view of marriage is already so extremely tainted by much of society. And so I think much of marriage isn't really what God ordained. It's just what man ordained.
Right.
And what God ordained is way better than what man ordains.
Right.
And so we have this disconnect of like, what even is marriage? I actually am like, been brainstorming for this podcast to find someone to like, let's break down like what even is marriage and like what does God call of marriage, because so much of society seems to be not fully understanding that.
The funny thing is, and this is where I really, really get in trouble in life, and I think humans do. And, I get it. Like, I'm coming from a very strong biblical worldview, and not everybody, listening to us is a Christian. But the reality is, the truths of the Bible work, whether you're a Christian or not. Like, there are things in the Bible about the way you treat your wife, and it creates a better marriage.
Yeah.
And being a selfish husband, that's not one of them. And so the hard work, I think, is being honest about where I'm at. One, so stopping denying like, oh, it's all your fault, I'm a perfect husband. And the other thing is, there is a biblical idea of, instead of worrying about my needs, living to meet your needs. There's this old saying that joy is spelled, I talk to my boys about this, that joy is spelled Jesus, others, you. The funny thing is, neurologically, we can learn to enjoy anything. And I can learn to gather great joy from serving my wife. In Ephesians, it talks about protecting and promoting my wife. And the term there is like this gardening term where I look at a plant and I'm like, oh, it's not really blooming. I think it needs some nitrogen. I think it needs this. Oh, it needs more water. It needs less water. Like figuring out how to make it bloom. And in that context, it's talking about a husband and how he treats his wife. Like, to look at my wife and gather joy, not from, hey, woman, get the food on the table for me, and living in that kind of barbaric selfishness, but rather looking at my wife and going, man, my wife is an amazing woman. There are things about her that I want to help bloom, and figuring out how to do that. In Proverbs, it says houses and lands are inherited from a father and mother in some cases. But it goes on to say, but a wife is a gift from God. And if I will just practically, on a regular basis, say, wait, God gave me her, I should probably treat her like she's a gift from God. Like right now, I'm not acting like this is a gift from God. I'm acting like I'm a gift from God, to her. But that's not what the verse says. And so the hard work of being honest about where I'm at, but then together working to grow in that and being committed to that, to saying, it's funny, years and years ago, we made some rules about how we fight in our marriage. And one of the rules was
fighting rules. Let's go.
Yeah. You got to wear boxing gloves. We had some good rules. And one of them was that we fight to resolve, not to hurt or win. Like, we're going to the theater and we're going to see this movie, and I really want to see movie A and she wants to see movie B. And I say, well, you're a big jerk. You always get to see what you want. And now she says, okay, we'll see your movie. But guess what? I didn't win. This is not going to be a good date, and it's not going to end well. And so, really seeking, it's a whole different approach to marriage when you recognize we are in this for life. And we need to work towards thriving for life. Like my wife and I were walking on the beach today talking about how we're going to adjust to this new phase in the next few years where it's just me and her.
Yeah.
and how we really want to prepare.
And she homeschooled your children through and through, right? So her world has been very much the children. So it almost will be harder for her, I imagine, than for you. Adjusting to like, whoa, there's no one to like, I mean, you can still shoot a text and visit and encourage and hopefully help with the grandbaby someday. But but
it's a major change, and we want to lay groundwork, because the funny thing in our culture that's happening right now, so I reached out to my mentor and I said, I got a whole bunch of friends. We're all getting old. Our kids are all flying out of the nest. We want you to come and you and your wife talk to us about really living our golden years with intentionality and purpose. And he said, well, that's not even the question. I'm like, oh, I thought I came up with something good there.
Yeah.
And he said, no, the question is, will your marriage even survive your kids leaving home? What are you talking about? And then we looked at some statistics, and it's crazy how many marriages are ending when the kids are gone.
I believe it. I believe it, because there's so much neglect in those years, I'm assuming. And then the children are gone, and you're like, well, what's left?
Right. You're two strangers.
You can kind of hide behind your children, so to say. Like, I'm so busy with them.
Right.
And then when they're gone, then you're like, wait, you're exposed. Like this exposed like my relationship issues. And I can totally see that.
And our children are a massive gift. I think it's in Psalm 127 where it talks about, what a gift they are to us, which again, the world's like, marriage stinks, kids are paying the butt. And God's like, marriage is awesome. I'm giving you a wife. Children are a gift. It actually says they're a reward. And they're amazing. Kids are incredible. And I love my kids. But I am only one with my wife. And this really struck me when my mom died. My mom and dad were married for 56 years. And God was so faithful to them in their marriage. And when my mom died, my dad and I were talking, we really are very close, and he was talking about how it doesn't seem right. Like, nobody else is hurting as bad as I'm hurting. And it struck me, and I told him, I said, well, Dad, here's the thing. I lost the world's best mom. You had an amputation. That's not the same.
Yeah.
Like, I lost someone, but you had part of you taken away. That's not the same, And so for our marriages, approaching it all along the way, and when your kids are little, it's super hard to prioritize each other. We were joking with you guys the other day about, and it wasn't a joke, it was true. Like, when our kids were little, we would do a date night because we're like, this is really important. But we were so exhausted, we just sit there and look at each other, like, just wore out. But prioritizing that and planning for, the end goal in mind.
There's a lot for me to chew on. Definitely, like, I'm not the gift. She's the gift, and I need to treat her like a gift. But also just the encouragement of like speaking wisdom into our boys, and those I'm just loving those masculine, biblically based like masculine traits that really want to like pass on and be intentional about that, so they can encounter the world with intentionality and be a light.
And there are a lot of resources today. When I was a kid, there was, my dad used to tell me, parenting's the hardest thing in the world. There's no blueprint for how to do this outside of the Bible, obviously. There are a lot of resources today about journeying through that, having ceremonies. When my boys were 13, I took them all deep in the back country of West Virginia to a trout stream, and we studied. When they both turned 13, they both were into dragons. But we did this whole thing on dragons and preparing them for their teen years and talking. That weekend, we did a whole biblical walk through the Bible on the brokenness within us, that there's a dragon in us. And
well, some people think that Satan wasn't a snake, but rather a dragon. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah.
Serpent.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And then I also wanted to point out too, I wanted to reiterate before we wrap up here. You said that, maybe someone listening here today doesn't have a biblical worldview, but you said that the Bible can serve you in so many amazing ways.
Oh, yeah.
Even if you don't believe in God, like, if you live out some of the truths that we believe are truths in the Bible, in your marriage, parenting, the way you treat others, the way you look at the world around you, it truly will serve your life.
Yeah.
And then it gets 100% better when you start to understand the grace of God. And so in those moments of weakness, when that fiery serpent is coming out of you and you're like, wait, I am so messed up at times, you can trust that God's grace is sufficient for you. And he says, by your weakness, I am strong. There's amazing goals to reach towards, but at the end of the day, like, none of us are perfect. And that's where God comes in. He wants to work in and through all the challenges that we're struggling with.
I think what you were just talking about, Bethany, that I've had more than one friend who would not identify as a Christian who loves the book of Proverbs.
Yeah, the Proverbs is amazing and humbling.
Yeah. But I mean, talk about practical life. Like, this is how life generally works, and how to succeed and how not to succeed.
Yeah. My mom loves the Proverbs too, so I'm very familiar with it. And if you guys didn't know, there's 31 chapters in the Proverbs. So maybe today's the day you pick up the Proverbs and read one a day and just ponder. I mean, you could go through it slower too, because there's so much to take in, but it really is an incredible book.
Well, I think in our marriages, and you said this, in our marriages and in our parenting, we don't have it figured out, and God is good and gracious. And I really don't think kids need us to be perfect. They need us to be consistent. They need us to be humble and to admit when we're wrong. But the Lord really does fill in the gaps. And, it's interesting. I think if you think with the end in mind and think through what are your core values, kids are pretty resilient. They'll figure out a lot of those things. And the world our kids are going to face is going to be different than us, but some of those core things aren't going to change.
Thanks so much, Dean. We're stoked to have a convo with you, and thanks for all the encouragement.